Hello and welcome back to the channel. I have another story that was shared with me that's very similar to some that I have spoken on recently. This nightmare of a story involves a black woman who was fined $40,000 for a few inches of fence line. Now, she decided to fight back, though. She took this homeowners association to court. And we're going to get into what happened with all of that, but it's really awful. Really awful that this woman had to go through what she went through. And they were even talking about taking her house. They were on the verge of taking this woman's house because there is definitely an unjust system in place. Now, folk don't like to hear it when we say things like they did it because of the color of her skin. They don't like to hear that. They'll say, well, because they didn't mention race, how can you bring race into it? It's like, give me a break. Anyway, let me get into the story before I go off too much into my opinion about this. But anyway, take a listen at the story. So basically, homeowner was fined $40,000 for a few inches of fence. She decided to take them to court. Okay. And this is what happens. It says the dispute between homeowners and their condo or homeowners association aren't uncommon, but a Maryland woman said her board took it too far. The disagreement involved a fence and its borders. And while the fence cost around $8,000 to construct, the litigation that followed amounted to nearly $40,000. And I want to stop right there for a moment. $8,000 for the fencing that she needed. These prices they're out of control. Even that is ridiculous to me. Out of control. Anyway, let me get back into this. I know what fencing costs. Much of what they are charging, especially for that kind of fencing too, I know what it costs. They are charging the majority of that in labor. Okay. It kind of reminds me of back in Detroit, how they were ripping off senior citizens, charging them goo gobs of money to install a furnace, where the furnace unit itself was only costing $400. They were charging these senior citizens between $8,000 and $10,000 for installation, in some cases more. So you mean to tell me the plumbing parts, and let me tell you how we know this. When we were in real estate, we started buying and installing our own furnaces. So we knew what the materials cost. Now that was back then. That was, close to 20 years ago. So of course I know prices have gone up even on the furnace unit, but 20 years ago, the furnace unit was only costing between $400 and $500 with all the components and things of that nature. At the most, you would spend $1,000 for everything. Okay, but that's pretty high for what I'm talking about. And so, where do you justify the $8,000 to $10,000? All of that is labor. Are you kidding me? Anyway, let me get back to this story. I'm just trying to establish how you have folk out here literally ripping other folks off, and they are all too happy to do it. But getting back into this story, it says this dispute started in 2017, said Betty Hooker, who lives in the Autumn Hills community in Waldorf, Maryland. Hooker obtained permission from the Autumn Hills Homeowners Association to construct a fence in her backyard. But in March of 2018, the association told her the fence was encroaching on the community's common area and forest conservation easement, a wooded area behind Hooker's home. Exactly 8 inches by his measurements. Okay, Hooker recalled the HOA president telling her 8 inches. Later on in the story, it's going to be revealed that it was actually 1 inch. But, whenever a liar has to do something to make something seem ridiculous, they have to go above and beyond to make it ridiculous. But in my opinion, even 8 inches is ridiculous to try to take a woman's home. But I do understand boundaries, okay? I do understand boundaries. This is why we got a survey of our property before we, did anything concerning fence lines or anything, right? Although much of that was already established here. It was just one side that wasn't. But we even with that, we made sure that we were even away from where the survey marker was. We came away from it so that there was nothing. Although the neighbor came over when we were doing the fence line to introduce himself, and there was no problems. He didn't ask no questions about what we were doing. They had theirs marked, which we came more than 2 feet away from where their mark was. So we were good there, but that's the point of which we understand boundaries. But of course, in a rural area, is much different. It's much different than when you are in within city limits. We understand that, but I still believe that this is ridiculous for them to try to go after her. They said 8 inches by their measurements, but you're going to later find out that it was only 1 inch. So anyway, a few months later, the HOA sent a letter letting her know that association would take legal action if the fence isn't moved. Hooker said she obtained an estimate and went back and forth with the HOA on who would pay for it. Then the HOA filed a complaint in Charles County Circuit Court in March 2019, asserting the fence was still encroaching, and they're seeking a fine of $25 per day dating back to November 2018, which at the time was around $3,500 plus costs and attorney's fees. At the hearing in the fall of 2019, Hooker represented herself. She said, "I felt like it was a frivolous case and the judge would hear me." That's what Hooker said. But guess what? The judge didn't hear her. She lost. Hooker lost. Ain't that something? But are we surprised? Are we surprised? Black woman with natural hair standing in the court pleading her case. Very simple case where she's thinking maybe, the court isn't going to be this unreasonable. But she lost. So immediately after, the Hookers moved their fence within the boundaries established by a survey company they hired. But the HOA contended the fence still wasn't in compliance. Ain't they something? Ain't that something? And in April 2021, they were back in court where Judge Doneen Carrington Martin ordered the Hookers to pay $22,000 in fines and nearly $17,000 in attorney's fees and costs. Devastating, emotionally and financially, said Hooker. When I heard the ruling from the judge, it was just unbelievable. I immediately got up and left the courtroom. So this judge basically, even though they moved the fence, they got a survey company. So what do you do when you hire a company to come and do something? And these companies that work hand in hand with these places from time to time, they still don't honor what the company does. What do you do in those cases? And again, you will have those who will say, race has nothing. They never said race had any. Of course, they're not going to say race has anything to do with it. They're not going to say it. Let me get back into the story, y'all. But yeah, this is the land of the free and the home of the brave, huh? All right. So getting back into the story. Following the judgment, the Hookers sought legal help to file an appeal. I believe it was around the time the warrant had been issued for the sheriff to come and try to seize their house, said Jessica Bloomberg of Costello PC, who represented the Hookers in their appeal. On January 7th, 2022, the Maryland Court of Special Appeals heard the case. Instead of helping the appellants, the HOA doggedly pursued litigation against them, racking up attorney's fees. And by the end of this case, were pursuing fines and fees for over a year of encroachments of under 1 inch in one corner of the property, Bloomberg argued in court. "You're saying the whole dispute is over 1 inch?" asked Judge Melanie Shaw Jeter of the Maryland Court of Special Appeals. And they said, yes, at the end of this case, the dispute was over 1 inch, less than 1 inch Your Honor, Bloomberg responded. It only matters that they were encroaching. And if they are encroaching, they are encroaching, Scott Silverman, the attorney representing the HOA, said in response to questions about the 1-inch encroachment. In April 2022, the Court of Appeals ruled that the HOA did not act in accordance with its governing documents. Okay. The declarations, and so they have an explanation here, right here, concerning their governing documents. I'm not going to read that. But it said the declarations for the HOA say very clearly notices that homeowners should get and due process they deserve before any further steps happens against them. And that was not followed here, said Bloomberg. So the case has been completely reversed and the hookers and all fines have been taken away. All attorneys' fees they will owe to the HOA are taken away, and actually they were awarded cost. So the homeowners association ended up having to pay out to them. Ain't that something? They tried speaking to the HOA president, William Henderson, about the decision. The attorney for the association said no one was available for comment at the time. A few days later, Fasti knocked on Henderson's door to see if he was available. No one answered, but the HOA attorney sent the statement below. It says the HOA board in good faith pursued the matter to fulfill their duty to enforce the community covenants. The HOA was naturally disappointed with the outcome of the appeals case. However, the HOA respects the decision of the court and is complying with its mandate. So, of course, they were disappointed. You're disappointed because you are used to the courts looking at the so-called black person and not regarding any rights that they might have or any injustices against them. You're used to some courts doing this, but in this case the court said no, we're not going to do this, we're going to right this wrong. And so of course the HOA is disappointed because they are used to a country that bends and twists to the every whim of a certain group of people. Okay, so homeowner goes on to say, I feel somewhat whole but not totally whole because I've been under a lot of stress. So she's been under a lot of stress. So who's going to make up for that? Because stress brings sickness and problems to your health. Who's going to do anything about that? This is one of those cases that, I'm so glad in the end she got the victory, but why put a person through years of stress like that? And we all know why. So let me finish off the article. It says, resolving HOA disputes. When asked if there's anything homeowners can do to stop HOA disputes from spiraling, Bloomberg responded, if they just go back to their governing documents, there's a lot of due process already in those. These bylaws detail how the association is run, including rules, voting rights, and procedures. A 6-hour training session for boards, Know Your Rights leaflet to the homeowners, something that simple could help a lot. Bloomberg added that lawyers can also help by settling the issue before it goes to court. Earlier this year, Sofasti reported on legislative attempts to require licensing and training for community managers, but the bill did not pass the Maryland General Assembly. So I agree that they should require licensing because some of these people, they are just going in there with their personal feelings. They don't want a particular person in their community because they believe that certain people do not belong in their communities. So they went searching for that issue. From what I saw in the overhead, it looked like the homeowner's fence line was lining right up with everyone else's. She had other homeowners on both sides of her. It looked like they all formed a straight line. So is there something I'm missing here? Is hers the only one that was too far back according to them? So folk again don't like to hear us making any type of connection to race. They don't like to hear us talking about that because they say it how do you know that it has something to do with race? Give me a break. That's because our eyes are wide open. We've experienced these types of things for so long in this country. What else would it have something to do with? What else? Again, if you look at the video, you will see exactly how beautiful this woman's house is. Her house is massive. She lives in a very prestigious community. The house is huge. Hear what I'm saying? The house is huge. So of course they would want to somehow take it from her. They wanted to try to use their little HOA rules to try to take this woman's house. Because they want her out, then no doubt, as in other cases, in the other cases I talked about, they personally benefited from the sale of a few people's homes. They actually personally benefited from bogus companies they set up or that they were a part of. I'm calling them bogus because how can you have such a conflict of interest to be on one side of the deal and you're also on the other side of it? Personally benefiting from the sale of homes that belong to homeowners within your community. There's always been a lot of monkey business, low down, dirty type things that happen in and around this country. And there's always been this getting away with it, right? But in this case, I'm so very thankful that this woman got the victory in this. I'm glad she got the victory. Of course, I'm pretty sure that there are all kinds of whispers and snarls and things, but let them just whisper on the other side of the fence. Anyway, done with the story. Be sure to leave your comments on this one. Tell us your thoughts. Until next time, keep it tight and keep it right. I'm out. Be sure to ring the bell to be notified of new uploads on this channel, and also comment, share, like, and subscribe.